Mortal Kombat 2021 it's a lot of fun when it is being a Mortal Kombat movie. Unfortunately, when it's trying to be a cringy modern Hollywood superhero drama, that's kind of where it goes to pop. So it's really fun if you're looking for, a stupid action movie that feels like it's from the 90s. But much like Venom, that came out a couple of years ago, where it is kind of a fun, super powered beat 'em up movie that's easy to watch and kind of easy to enjoy. When you look a bit past the surface level and look into it a bit more, it is a bit of a crap mess. But not to say that won't work for a lot of people. I am looking at this from the perspective of like a massive Mortal Kombat and NetherRealm fanboy. So I have quite high. I don't want to say I have a high bar when it comes to Mortal Kombat, because I completely admit that Mortal Kombat does have a stupid story. As much as I enjoy the lore and the characters, I can admit that the story can get a bit ridiculous and there's a lot of retcons and it is a bit of a mess in general. But it's something a lot of people really care for, including myself. People really appreciate. So it is something that filmmakers should definitely take seriously when adapting it. And I think for the most part, they do very well. The introduction of the movie, which is like a big Scorpion and Sub-Zero origin story, which is not really I will go into semi-spoilers, not big spoilers. It is not really a spoiler because they literally just released the first scene of the movie online for some reason. Movies really have to stop like showing way too much footage before the movie's released. I think it kind of takes away a lot of the anticipation. Like, no one's going to go to the movie and go, oh man, did you see that opening scene? Which was a very good scene, by the way. But no, because everyone's seen the opening scene before the movie's even out. Like, I just don't think it's really healthy for the movie, or any movies, to really release that much footage beforehand. I mean, you shouldn't release the entire introduction of the movie before the movie's even out. But regardless, it's a good scene. It sets up Mortal Kombat-ness pretty well. That scene and a couple of other scenes, including the big end scene. The Sub-Zero Scorpion stuff is a lot of fun. It's really good. And you'll be pleased to know that the action is actually kind of fantastic. Not all fights are made equal. The Scorpion stuff, fantastic. Most of the Sub-Zero stuff, pretty great. I was quite surprised that a lot of the Jax action scenes were some of the best ones in the movie. Most of the other stuff is hit or miss. There was some pretty meh, which kind of really contrasts the really slick, cool as fuck, like actual like Mortal Kombat action scenes. So it's kind of weird how it seems almost like there was a secondary director who did a lot of the throwaway fights, and that the main director was really focused on the big fights, which is possible, I suppose. But the fight scenes for the most part are fantastic, really sleek, creative stuff for the ninja fights, some quite fun crunchy stuff for Jax and characters like that, and of course a lot of the scenes are set up like rounds of an actual fighting game, like round one fight and then there's a fatality. It feels a lot of the fights are very much presented like it is a fighting game, which is a cool idea. And there is a lot of really good references to the game's characters that aren't able to be part of the main plot. They do still reference characters like Nightwolf and Katana. There's a button input as graffiti on one of the walls in the background. I'm pretty sure Jax does like a down 2 at some point. There's a lot of nice little nods. Although there was some kind of odd nods that seem to not be researched. Like they literally go out the way to like reference Nightwolf while also telling you his exact race, what they refer to. And then they call Reptile a reptilian thing. But like, Reptile has a species name. It is known in the Mortal Kombat lore, so it's weird that they just call it, send out the reptilian thing, but then it's like, oh yeah, Nightwolf, Matoka. Like lore inclusive information, but then some characters, they seem to avoid that. It's a bit odd. But for the most part, the characters that you know and love are mostly done really well. Scorpion's really cool. He never quite hits that level of like vengeful spirit. He does, but it never quite feels like 100% Scorpion. He is more of like a tragic figure, which I think is really good for storytelling, and it makes you kind of empathize with him a bit more. But there is that little bit of me that just wanted him to go full on fucking Scorpion mode. But I mean, I think he does go far enough for most people, and maybe that's just me. Sub-Zero's really cool. It is Bihan, its original piece of shit Sub-Zero, which is cool. No Qui-Lang here. Not to say they might not go into that in the future sequels and things like that, if they do that well. I don't know how well the movie's done exactly yet. There's only really just come out. Most characters are what you expect. Like Jax and Sonya, they're Jax and Sonya. They're not. As far as my love for Mortal Kombat goes, I never really give a shit about Jax and Sonya. I don't think they're very interesting or engaging characters. They are Mrs. Army Person and Mr. Army Person. Jax is a bit more interesting to me, and he is a bit more fun in this movie than Sonya. And it's nothing against any of the actors for this. It's just that they weren't given fascinating characters to work with, and I know a lot of people are going to hate me for saying that, but I'm sorry, Sonya Blade's never been an interesting character. As far as I've never been straight low intense on Sonya Blade. She's not a character that's ever interested me. So maybe I'm missing something of that one. She does have a lot of fans, but when it comes to Mortal Kombat characters and story, I don't really give a shit about Sonya Blade, and this movie does not help that. I'll just say that. Sonya Blade does a perfectly fine job, Jax does a perfectly fine job, but the character that really stands out is a surprise and isn't a surprise in terms of history of like live action versions of Kano. He's usually alright, but nothing special. But I can proudly say, Mortal Kombat fans, not just... And this is something that was a really good part of the Mortal Kombat 11 story mode as well. Kano is an absolute legend in this movie. Amazingly played by Josh Lawson. Not one of the more well-known actors from the movie, but he should get all the credit. He does a fantastic job here. It is a little forced, the comedy. They do try to make him... He makes a joke out of every single situation he's in. Every single line in the movie, he has to throw a joke in. But luckily for us, he absolutely nails like 80% of these jokes. Even some stuff that isn't even funny is funny because he just has this blunt, like, what the fuck is happening Australian charm to him. The first thing he says is like, "Good morning, sunshine," and for some reason it's hilarious. He does not stop swearing. He straight up calls Liu Kang a pussy. He's a lot of fun. And that doesn't go for characters like Liu Kang and Kung Lao, who I suppose aren't fun characters in general. They're really fun characters to play and play against. Maybe not Liu Kang if you're not a Liu Kang main. I like playing Liu Kang, so it doesn't bother me too much online, but I know a lot of people hate fighting Liu Kang. And Kung Lao is, when you know what you're doing with Kung Lao, he's a fucking nightmare online. And that kind of plays into the way they fight in this movie. Kung Lao was pretty cool, but Liu Kang is just... He's just kind of there. He's not really that big of a character. He's just another one of their warriors. He's one of the stronger ones that are there to train the new warriors, but he's not really like the chosen one, Liu Kang. He's not the main character like he would be, like he is in the Mortal Kombat game storyline, which is fine. I know a lot of people aren't super into Liu Kang, so they're not too bothered about seeing him as the main character, and I totally understand that. But when your replacement is this made-up character called Cole, is it Cole Young or something? He's I don't even know his name because who gives a shit. He's this descendant of Scorpion, and he's just some guy who's like an MMA fighter. And he exists as... He's another one of these annoying Hollywood tropes. He exists as a surrogate character. Like Hellboy had to have Myers because we wouldn't understand the Hellboy universe. So Hollywood thinks we need like a normal human being that we can connect to put us in that situation. And this movie does the same thing with Cole. He's got a family, partner he loves, and a young girl he looks after. But like when she's first introduced, she does no good acting. So she kind of takes you straight out of it. She's a little girl. Like, I don't have high standards for children actors. There's literally only like 3 or 4 movies where children actors haven't annoyed me. It's just a personal thing. But she does not do an amazing job, and I don't blame her. She's a child in a fucking Mortal Kombat movie. I don't know if she was passionate about doing it or what. But she doesn't really sell it for you, along with the wife who does a fine job. But I don't give a shit about Cole, whatever his name is, and his family. Like, I don't give a shit. But the movie makes you tries to make you give a shit. So like there's stakes in the movie, and then Cole has to do the Mortal Kombat tournament to save his family and the world and all that shit. For the last time, Hollywood, I don't need a surrogate character. Just make your important characters lovable and relatable. The entire movie could have been about Scorpion, and it would have been more touching than the story we got. Because they think we're going to relate to this like street level person. He's got a family. He's a normal guy, just like you and me. Like, who gives? It doesn't really work unless you've got some really, really good storytelling behind it. When you do it because you feel like you need to, it doesn't really work very often. I give a shit about John Wick. I'm nothing like John Wick. I'm not some unbelievably legendary hitman. But if you kill a man's dog, I give a shit. It's as simple as that. You kill a puppy beagle, I'm invested. End of story. You attack Scorpion's home with the life he's built around him and his family. Yeah, I get it. I'm like, I totally understand that. I feel sympathy. Good enough for me. Let's move on. I don't need this extra story with this new guy who has a whole family and he has to fight to survive and like his family needs to live and everyone's after his family. Low stakes have just never interested me. And I don't really think they interest a lot of people. I think Hollywood just thinks they interest a lot of people. Hollywood thinks that women won't go and see a movie if there isn't a love subplot. Hollywood thinks that men won't go see a movie if there isn't some sexualized woman in it. Hollywood thinks no one will go see a movie if there's no comedy in the movie. As many times as it can be proved that a movie can just do what the movie needs to do to be the movie it's supposed to be and not force these things in, Hollywood still don't really get the message. So when it comes down to these movies, sometimes they get away with it. Venom gets away with it because it's entertaining enough. I think Mortal Kombat will get away with it because the movie is entertaining enough. It's a good switch off movie. If you don't really give that much of a shit and you switch off and you just ignore all that stuff, then you'll have a good time and the movie will make money and it'll do absolutely fine. I don't review movies on this channel so I can just ignore the problems. I'm going to talk about what I think makes a good movie and what doesn't make a good movie. And what makes Mortal Kombat good is most of a good chunk of the characters stand out being Kano, even though he is a little forced. And oh my god, is that it? Is Kano the only good character in this movie? You can't get like a tier list. Like top tier is Kano. Under that you've got like Kung Lao and Raiden, who were like doing their thing. Shang Tsung, perfectly fine, but you can't really replace the original actor of Shang Tsung. Like, he was so good. He knows he's in a Mortal Kombat movie. He nailed this level of like corny, but also kind of really cool. That was so good that NetherRealm hired him to play Shang Tsung in the fucking video game. Like, when your live action portrayal of a character that already exists is better than the one that exists in the original medium, that they get you to replace that original medium, then you're doing something right. So regardless of how good Shang Tsung could have been, it just isn't the same. Scorpion, Sub-Zero, yeah, good characters, they're good enough. Sub-Zero does become this kind of I am evil now and I will do evil things, end of story. As for Scorpion, is more of like, you're waiting for him to come back as the kind of spirit of vengeance that he's supposed to be. Mild spoilers to anyone who's going to this movie just to see Scorpion. He's not in it a lot. The movie's not about him. It's about his descendant, Cole, who's a made-up character. And it feels very much like a Hollywood formula. And he's kind of irrelevant and no one gives a shit. So yeah, the characters are very hit and miss. Kano's fantastic, but everyone else is either good enough or just not very interesting. Goro's in here, not very big amount of time. That's what kind of annoyed me. I do love Goro as a character. I think he's kind of fun. He's a character that lots of people don't take seriously unless you're really into Mortal Kombat. Once you know that he's not just like some four-armed, brain-dead guy. He's a prince. He is a commander of an army. He is a legendary fighter. Most places just kind of like use him as, oh, he's a big guy that beats up people. And this movie uses him as a big guy that beats up people. He's in it for a little bit. He's pretty cool while he's in it, to be fair. He's all CGI. He doesn't have that kind of interesting puppet that the original movie had. But he's not quite used as a jobber, but he's kind of used as a jobber. And it's a real shame because it's Goro. I was waiting for him to be a character that would be hyped up for the entire movie, and then he'll be like this big surprise at the end, and that would be the big fight. He is kind of a big fight scene, but he's just not the fight scene, which is a bit of a shame. But you know, that's just the way it is. Sometimes you have a lot of characters to go through. You're including Bihan and Sub-Zero, and you're including Scorpion and Goro, and all these are like end-level threats. You need to kind of, not make it too much of a mess. You don't want an Amazing Spider-Man 2 situation, but I do feel like Goro deserves a little more, along with Melina. She's here, she's slightly Melina-y, but she's become such a kind of like iconic queen in like the fandom of Mortal Kombat, and she's just kind of like a jobber in this movie. She's just like another one of Shang Tsung's people. Nothing special about her. She does some Melina-y stuff, but she never quite feels like a Lee Melina you want to see in a live action movie. Reptile is interesting. He's like Mortal Kombat 3 Reptile. He's very much like a reptilian creature, and he's, once again, not in a lot. He's a bit of a jobber, but it's kind of interesting to see that version of him, I suppose. A lot of surprise characters are in this movie as well. I don't want to ruin all the characters. I feel like I do need to talk about Raiko. He's in this movie, but it's not what you would expect from Raiko. He is a character that's kind of been left behind. He's a bit of an obscure one. He's a bit of a weird one. He's a character that never really quite worked. And he's one of the characters that really needs a reworking. He needs a new coat of paint, something interesting to do, kind of like he had in the comics. He just needs a new big push, something else going for him, you know what I mean? And this movie is a step in the wrong direction. His only line in the movie is, bleh. He grunts a little bit, and that's pretty much it. He's a jobber. So even including him seemed really weird. But like I say, there's a lot of nice references and some fun characters. Cabal was a nice surprise because he looks like Mad Max level Cabal. And he's one of the costumes that works really well in this movie, which was a surprise. A lot of the other characters don't look like themselves. And the Tara, Melina doesn't really look like Melina. And Scorpion and Sub-Zero look pretty good considering it's live action. Some of the ninja costume stuff looks a bit clunky and rubbery and cheap, but it probably looks as good as you can really do that these days. That stuff's never particularly looked amazing live action, so it does the best job it can do with those costumes. But a lot of the costumes do lead a little bit to be desired, I think. And one last thing that I think is kind of a big problem with the movie, I mean, it's not a problem if you don't care about Mortal Kombat, but it is if you do. They introduced this thing, and I can't remember what they called it. It was like Okama, which makes me just think of One Piece. But it's like you have to, like, the champions have to unlock their Okama, and that's like their superpowers. They unlock superpowers, which if you know Mortal Kombat, that's not how it fucking works. Like, they're not interested in advanced technology and ancient techniques. And Kano has a laser eye, which, yeah, it makes sense. But Kano has a laser eye through unlocking his power by being angry. He does not have a cybernetic eye. Let me just reiterate. He gets an issue with his face at some point, but he doesn't get a replacement eye, or he doesn't get like a faceplate with a laser beam in it. He actually creates a laser beam through his eye with magical powers. If that sounds more believable to you than him just getting a cybernetic eye that Hollywood seems to think is more believable, then I don't fucking know. I think Hollywood just thinks we're used to MCU movies now, so everything needs to kind of just be a superpower. But no, yeah, Jax doesn't even really have, he has cybernetic arms, but they only become really good cybernetic arms when he uses magical powers to make the cybernetics bigger and stronger. Yeah, it's really weird and doesn't really need to be a thing. You could have just given big cybernetic arms. You could have just give Kano a laser eye cybernetically. But no, instead, they have to unlock magical powers through their Mortal Kombat training. Spoilers, by the way, there's no Mortal Kombat tournament. It's all set before the Mortal Kombat tournament. And it kind of like, it's about either preventing or making the tournament possible. I guess spoiler warnings, I think I'm going to blub them slightly over semi-spoilers, but it's nothing really like wild. There's not a lot of surprises in this movie, plot-wise. The crazy thing is that it just doesn't lead into the Mortal Kombat tournament. It's more like a lead into the Mortal Kombat tournament, but the movie doesn't actually have a Mortal Kombat tournament. And the movie's called Mortal Kombat, and it's about the Mortal Kombat tournament, but there's no Mortal Kombat tournament. And Johnny Cage isn't a character in this movie, really, which just seems, it's fine with me, I guess, but it's kind of bizarre to not include him. And it sounds like I'm being really negative about this movie, but I'm actually want to say that it's really decent. As far as video game movies go, this is the most fun I've ever had watching a video game movie, and it's got to be the best live action Mortal Kombat movie. If you can switch off and appreciate the Mortal Kombat stuff without caring too hard about the Mortal Kombat stuff, then you will have a very good time here. It's a very enjoyable movie. It's a lot of fun. The action's mostly fantastic. The characters are inconsistent, but a lot of it is there, and Kano, like I say, is everything he says is just fucking hilarious. He does carry this movie. I do think in retrospect, if the movie didn't have Kano in it, I probably wouldn't have really enjoyed. I feel like I would have slogged a bit more. This is the one Hollywood trope that really works in this movie, the comedic relief character. Although usually I guess this would be Johnny Cage, but in this instance they use Kano, which I think is a really good choice. I think Kano is a really underutilized character sometimes in Mortal Kombat outside of the video games. He's fantastic in MK11, and he's really good here. So I think people are starting to realise that Kano is a fantastic character. But I think this movie would massively suffer in the entertainment department and in the character department if Kano wasn't around. So this movie kind of lies on Kano's shoulders. Kano and the action. The action, fantastic. There's fatalities. A lot of it is set up like a video game. They do a pretty good job of a lot of that stuff. And they do say things like fatality and, those kind of references, which don't mostly work because they are a little cringy. But, like, once again, it's interesting. The one time it does work, it's when Kano says it, because it feels kind of ironic, like he's taking the piss almost. So that works really well for Kano. He does an amazing job. Can't say enough good things about him. As forced as he is fantastic. Action, Mortal Kombat references, all good. It looks decent enough. The effects are surprisingly good. I was kind of expecting them to look a lot worse than they did, but there's some really cool things Sub-Zero does. He makes it snow in the city, and then he makes all the snow go back up into the sky like a reverse rain. It all clots together, and he starts just like piling hailstorm on people. That shit's really cool. So they do a little bit of creative license for the characters, and they do stuff we've never seen them do before, which works really well. A lot of creativity with a lot of the fight scenes, a lot of good CGI, considering it's a Mortal Kombat movie anyway. Some of the CGI is a little more obvious. Natara's gonna stick out to you a bit weirdly. It's kind of like Uncanny Valley. Your eyes can kind of tell that her head doesn't realistically match the rest of her, if that makes sense. But for the most part, the CGI is consistently decent, a lot better than you would expect from a video game movie anyway. So there's a lot of good things to say about this movie, really. It looks good, it's really enjoyable, it's entertaining thanks to Kano and the combat, but I feel like some of the Hollywood tropes just kind of really let it down. The storyline is pretty basic, piss poor stuff. We have to be surrogated through by this Cole person that just isn't fucking relevant and no one cares about. The same with his family. The stakes don't work because we do not care about Cole and his family. The only time I felt anything about anyone's family this entire movie is a little bit of Scorpions at the beginning of the movie, but then the movie after that is no longer about Scorpion, so that kind of seems like a bit of a waste, if I'm honest. So yeah, the Hollywood aspects of this movie really let it down. But if you can turn off, not really give a shit, and you want to see an action movie, then you've got all the blood and guts and fight scenes that you want in this movie. It's a complete crowd pleaser. Much like Venom, it's a crowd pleaser with a good amount of really good fight scenes and some gore, but everything else is kind of lacking. The characters aren't as really fun as you want them to be when you really know Mortal Kombat anyway. You might not really notice, but a lot of them are just kind of boring in there. Though I do like how many characters they at least tried to do, and the ones that were important to do right, they did right. Although the rules don't really make sense. They're breaking the rules of the tournament to like invade Earthrealm and trying to dismantle them before the Mortal Kombat tournament, and there's all this talk about the Elder Gods, but at no point do Elder Gods give a shit. Does Raiden really give a shit? I can't really tell. It's just kind of weird. It's weird how they just ignore some things for the plot to progress and then avoid actually putting us in the Mortal Kombat tournament. That is all a bit weird. But like I say, solid video game movie, solid action movie, surprisingly solid comedy. But if you want something more from your movie going experience, you want some interesting ideas, you want something that isn't a typical Hollywood trope, then this is not really the movie for you. But if you're going to see a Mortal Kombat movie for blood and action, and because it's a Mortal Kombat movie, that's what you expect, then you will be pleasantly satisfied, I suppose. That's probably the best way I could put it. It will do the job. I have a lot of bad things to say about the movie, but I can't sit here and say that I didn't really enjoy my hour and 45-minute experience watching Kano take the piss out of everything and people get cut in half and get the shit beaten out of them. Really, really, really fun movie. And it misses as many marks on the Mortal Kombat checklist as it hits. So it does a good job in some aspects and doesn't do a very good job in some other aspects. But hey, pleasantly surprised. I didn't watch a lot of stuff going into the movie. I only watched the one reveal trailer, and that didn't do a lot for me because I just kind of thought it looked a bit cheesy. But then I thought maybe that's a good thing. It's a Mortal Kombat movie. But going in, I was pleasantly surprised at how much I actually enjoyed the movie. So I definitely recommend it for like a Friday night watch if you don't really give a shit about anything. You want to just chill out with a movie, this will definitely do it for you. But just don't expect anything special from it. But I think I'm the only person who really expects something special from a Mortal Kombat movie. It doesn't hit the level of a Mortal Kombat story mode in a NetherRealm game, but I don't think we'll get a better Mortal Kombat movie. The only thing they could do is make a sequel, introduce some of the cooler characters, have an all-out bloody Mortal Kombat tournament, and just go for it. I think that's all they could really do to improve the sequel. Just ignore the Hollywood tropes and just do your own fucking thing. Just do the Mortal Kombat thing, and I think you'll be golden. Get Johnny Cage in there, have a bloody good time. It'll be great. You can do that. I think this movie will do pretty alright on the streaming circuits and things like that. Probably well enough for a sequel. So if you do get a chance to do it, I do ask that you, and I mean you don't have to fucking listen to me, I'm no one, but I do hope that you cut down on some of the tropes, that you cut down on some of the stereotypes of Hollywood filmmaking and you just let them make a Mortal Kombat movie. I think that'll work really well. If you can keep all that good stuff, the action and the gore and the references and the clear love for some of the characters of Mortal Kombat, if you can keep all that going and just cut out that slog of the movie that is just Hollywood bullshit, I think your sequel could go a very long way and it could be a lot of fun. But yeah, I guess I don't really have a ranking system set up on this channel. So for now, I'm just going to call this 3 out of 5 stars. It is pure movie entertainment. It's what you want on a weekend. You like a bit of gore, it'll do it for you. If you like a good fight scene, it'll do it for you. It's funny, but it's not particularly fantastically presented, well written or well made or anything special really. But it is a very solid 3-star gory action movie. Much like Godzilla vs. Kong that came out earlier this year. It's a big crashy bashy crowd pleaser. Just don't look too deep into it, because then that's when the movie becomes shit. So just don't worry about that, and you're going to have a pretty good time. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It very easily could have been worse. And as far as video game movies go, this was absolutely a highlight. Depending on who you like in the roster of Mortal Kombat, this movie will either really do it for you or really just not quite do it for you. So thanks for watching. This was kind of it was going to be like a 5-minute review, but this I think this is going to be a little bit longer. If you do like this kind of rambling style of review, then stick around on the channel. A lot of the Mortal Kombat videos, I want to do a ranking of all the Mortal Kombat movies. That does include this movie and the animated one that came out last year. I guess that would mean I'd also have to talk about that movie, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. To the 16 people who are subscribed and maybe wondering where I am still here. I'm quite lazy. I run 2 YouTube channels. I have a job and depression. So it can be hard to really keep everything going in motion as much as I would like it to. We have some big videos being developed as we speak for this channel, some really big fun things, but I'm a little bit of a perfectionist and I like things to be done correctly, if you know what I mean. So some of those videos will take a little bit longer. I'm hoping to do some nicer, smaller ones as we go along now. I was in the middle of working on like a Dead by Daylight guest character list, but one of them was announced like a couple of weeks ago, which would be the Resident Evil one. And one of them, I was going to suggest a certain type of gameplay for the character, but then they give that gameplay to another character, which is kind of a surprise. So it feels like I can't really do that one. So I'll have to rework that and get back on that and see what I can do with that. But that will be coming eventually sometime soon. A lot more survival horror game stuff coming. That should be really fun. And a lot more horror movie stuff. That will be continuing, and some new stuff. I did that video on how many times Jason Voorhees died, and I absolutely loved that video. So I might jump on and try and do a Freddy one, which might be a bit complicated because he's never really alive, except for in the first movie, in a flashback. I don't know, I'll work something out for that one, because those videos are nice, short, and fun. I just suggest you stick around. There will be more. I'm still here. So thanks to everyone who does stick around. And if you're new, I do a lot of videos on Mortal Kombat and horror video games and horror movies. So stick around for that. Subscribe, like the video, comment what you think of the movie. If you want to shout at me about Sonya Blades and my horrible opinions on it, I'm sorry. That's just the way I feel. Feel free to try and change my mind in a positive way. And we'll see you all next time. Alright, thanks for watching.